Today's episode is brought to you by Second Home, a workspace and cultural venue in the heart of Hollywood. The 2-acre campus includes indoor and outdoor workspaces, garden offices, conference and meeting room space, a roof deck, and an on-site restaurant. Second Home is designed to cultivate creativity and collaboration, whether you need a writer's room, temporary office, or a longer-term solution for you or your team. The campus, which is covered in plants and natural light, creates a unique and motivating environment, just a few steps away from Sunset and Western. Let Second Home set the scene and leave the storytelling to you. Book a tour now by visiting secondhome.io/Hollywood or emailing membership.hollywood@secondhome.io. Welcome to In the Envelope, a podcast from Backstage, the one-stop shop for actors and creators both above and below the line. I am your host, Vinnie Mancuso, Backstage Senior Editor and Professional Entertainment Obsessive. I'll be your guide through every corner of the creative industry with the help of some of your favorite stars. Here you'll find intimate, in-depth talks with today's most award-worthy names in film, television, and theater. Along the way, we'll get advice on living your best creative life, relatable stories of the highest highs and lowest lows, and maybe, just maybe, a rare peek in the envelope.
Theater is, for an actor, I think it's needed for life. To go through the experience of being an actor in life, theater can be very useful. Because what happens in theater just happens in theater, which is that encounter, that moment where you are in front of an audience, when it's not just about your process, but your process gets affected by the way it's received.
Welcome to In the Envelope, the Actors Podcast. I am your host, Vinnie Mancuso, and I am absolutely thrilled that joining us today is the wonderful Diego Luna. Now, Diego's been a bit of an icon in his native Mexico since he was like 7 years old, but many of you may have first met him in probably the greatest road trip movie of all time, 2001's Y Tu Mama Tambien, and maybe even more of you first met Diego in, of course, Rogue One, a Star Wars story. Diego is returning to Star Wars with Andor, debuting on Disney+. And we sat down with him about a week out from the show and also like 40 minutes before he presented at this year's Emmy Awards. So his excitement is palpable, and we covered a lot. That includes the pretty wild way he got into acting in the first place, honing his craft on stage in Mexico, all the way up to the Star Wars franchise, where he's actively working to make this galaxy far, far away feel just a bit more human. It's a truly, truly delightful conversation, and I cannot wait for you to hear it. So let's just get into it. Here is Diego Luna. So how's it going?
It's all good, man. All good. I mean, we are very close to be releasing the show and showing it to the audience, which is something I can't wait for, you know.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, you know, how do you usually spend the last sort of on ramp onto, like, you know, you've done the work, you've thought it over, you've done the creative process. Now it's like, let's show the world. How do you like to spend that sort of weird bubble, that in between time?
Well, the thing is, with the series is very different, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still working on it. I'm still like doing the Spanish the Spanish dialogue, recording that, you know, doing all the looping and for the show to be shown in Latin America and even in the States. There's many people that actually watch it in Spanish. So I'm voicing the character, revoicing the character, you know, which is an interesting process. So I'm doing that in Mexico. We're not done yet with the 12 episodes. I'm working in something else, which always helps, you know, being just playing another role, getting your head like around another project, another story is important, because there's nothing else I can actually do, besides trying to tell people why people should watch it. There's something that has to happen in the moment. You're not in control anymore, and it belongs to the audience, that, and that's when you're just witnessing, which is a lovely feeling too, when you're proud of what you did, when you're sure of, when you understand what decisions are behind the project. It's wonderful, As an actor, many times you don't know what project you've been part of. As an actor, you're invited to a very short period of the process, crucial one, but very short. Many times you arrive and most decisions have been made. You perform, you think you did something, but then they go edit, and it's like rewriting. When you go editing, it's like rewriting with the all the tools and all the material you gave. But at the end, someone reimagines the story. So many times as an actor, you are waiting for the release also to understand what you've been part of. But in this case, for me, it's different because I got involved as a producer. Therefore, I've been part of the show from the beginning, from day one. And I understand almost everything. Like, it feels very, very much my project, It feels as mine as it is Tony's or Sana's or Kathleen or anyone that has been there since day one. Because I understand why we're going this way and not another way. I understand why we're working with these people, why the team is this one. I went through the struggle of getting here, and I know we've done the best we can. So in that way, it's easier than in other projects, where you struggle with probably with the idea of being ready, because it's easy to stay there. It's easy to stay there, fixing and polishing and fixing and polishing and rethinking stuff and giving yourself another chance, and then bringing a different kind of music and a different style of editing and trying that out and testing. Testing is great, but it could get you completely lost, But I would say that with this show, it's different than with anything else I've done ever. Normally you spend this time trying to convince people that they have to watch what you just made.
It's like trust me,
please, and you're trying to get people's attention, and you go to talk shows and try to make and you go to talk shows and you try to make jokes and tell stories that have nothing to do with the show. So you get a chance at the end to say, "No, by the way, next Friday,
you need that joke to go viral, so people are like, "Oh, that sounds like an interesting little side project."
Who's that guy? What is he talking about? Let's see him in whatever he's doing, But and with this show, is very special. The universe of Star Wars has so much attention and expectation. There's people that out there that really want to love the project. They're waiting for it. They've been waiting for a long time. And they make you aware of that, which is the beautiful part of this, To me, that's very special. And again, nothing I've lived before, nor I would expect from any other project, that I get so many messages every day of like, "Oh my God, we can't wait. It's quite unique and special. So here is about making sure we deliver the right information for people to be expecting what they should, and not something else.
Sort of like how Andor is a bit of an origin story. It's a character, seeing how they got there. I kind of want to get a sense of your origin story as an actor and how you got to this place you are, because it sounds like you're in a great place of control and of you're sort of settled into this role as producer actor. But I'm very interested in the journey that brought you there, starting all the way at the beginning. I believe you started doing plays and such. You were 8 years old, doing plays. And I'm curious what some of those plays were, and what was the first push into acting for you? What was the sort of moment or genesis, or what sort of pushed you towards acting, basically?
For me, acting was about belonging to a world that I wanted to be part of, which was my father's. Acting was about being part of the theater in an active way. I was there witnessing. Obviously, I was born in the theater. My father would take me everywhere. My mom died when I was 2 years old, so my father had to play both roles, and I was used to go to the theater, to go to school during the day and then catching up with my dad at the theater and spending my whole afternoon there, while he was working, and being around and watching the rehearsals, but also getting out and spending my time with the people working, in that world, in that universe, not just the actors, but the technicians, and there was the school was behind it. It was like this cultural complex in Mexico that I used to be most of the time, either the one in the university or the one called the National Theater one, basically. And that was life. And I just wanted to make sure I could belong in a way I was needed also. This feeling, this orphan feeling of like, well, someone's going to take away my dad too, so I should do something about it, And being in the theater was the way to make sure I was there. And the first thing I did was I was 6 years old. It was in 85, and a very important director in Mexico died a year before or that year, and his name was Julio Castillo. So in the National Theater they decided to put two of his most iconic plays. One was called De la Calle, and the other was called De Película. And De Película was really interesting, and it's the one I participate on. And it was like you would sit down in a theater, and in front of you there was like all the chairs of a cinema. So you would be like, it felt like a mirror, in front of you. You had all these like cinema. You were looking like if you were standing in the screen looking at the audience.
That's really cool.
Of the cinema.
Yeah.
And the whole play was about that cinema and how life passed for this director in that cinema. And his son used to play this role, which was a little boy that would come in and witness the whole play from the inside. And the boy had a few lines at the end. And the boy represented the director, and he was talking about the cinema he grew up in and how he saw life pass through the films he watched there and the experiences he had there. And anyway, so when the director died, his son was too old to play the role. And a very important director in Mexico called Luis de Tavira was going to coordinate the show, the play. Or direct it again, but trying to direct it the way Julio would have done it, and I was basically one of the only actors that came into a team that knew each other, and he invited me because he was with my dad talking at home. They used to work a lot together, and my father was programming the theater, the National Theater, in that moment. Besides doing set designing, he was doing that too. So he came down the stairs and he saw me. Luis de Tavira saw me and said, like, "You want to do a play?" And I went like, "Oh, well, yeah, but I mean, I would need my dad to say yes." So he went up and talked to my dad, and my dad wasn't really excited about it, but also he knew he couldn't stop it because he was taking me every day to the theater. It was my family. I knew all these people, and he could not say no, I guess, and he said yes, if he keeps going to school, yes. So the first thing I did was like a National Theater big production, not meant for kids. It was a 3-hour show. There was a moment where like all the actors, we got nude, and we're representing the 70s. And I remember walking completely naked at 6 years old and giving a flower to a person in the audience.
I mean, when you start like that, like that's it's a great introduction to acting, basically.
So yeah, I mean, and for me was I don't know what it was, but it was like being part of a family. It was a huge play. There was more than 20 actors. It's all the actors that are my reference today. Amazing actors, and that I grew up watching, that I learned a lot from, and that were the best back then and are the best today. And I had the chance to live that experience. And after that, for me, it was clear that going to school and doing all the stuff you expect from a kid was something I had to do to get there. I had to do to earn my chance to be part of that troupe. And since then I started doing theater, and I didn't do TV until I was like 11 or 12, and cinema too. I think the first stuff I did in cinema was at 11. So I worked like a good 5 years doing stuff in the National Theater also, because we were, I mean, there was a huge prejudice around commercial projects, in my family. Well, not in my family. My father was like pretty much this guy that since very young was called maestro, so which I mean, can really mess you up, but the point is, like, I was doing the best theater in Mexico, and I guess I was the only kid allowed to, so therefore I had no competition. No, or one of the only kids allowed to, and my friends were the sons and daughters of people doing theater, till today.
I was going to ask if that's sort of what you consider your, quote unquote education, because there's really no formal education there. So I'm curious, how did you eventually settle on like what you think of as acting, or your quote unquote process? Is it sort of like, just gathering things until whatever stuck, or was there a moment where you were like, I need to maybe figure out what my actual process looks like?
I think my process, I learned to first of all, in theater, most of the time, the people you work with, not just directors but actors too, are teachers. It's quite common that teachers are actually active. They're not just teachers. Therefore, I always have mentors. When I was a kid, I was just like playing, I guess, and learning from just the experience. But later on, as soon as I was like 15, 16, I started taking a lot of workshops, and I was allowed to go into grown-ups would be going, professional actors would go just for perfectioning techniques or stuff like that. And I would be allowed because I was a weird case, I remember going to this place, Casa del Teatro, where many actors that were 5-6 years older than I am were going to, and it's people I now I work with and I see, and I was there. I was just not allowed to be an official student, but I was there, and I would say it had a lot to do with the processes I went on, because I used to be part of a lot of projects that were workshops, like 6 months, 8 months workshops that would end on a theater play, as a result of the process. But I did, and my father pushed me to do that. I did go to a lot of those. We call them talleres de perfeccionamiento actoral. I don't know how that would translate, but it is exactly that. It's like what you do after you do after you go through university, and what you do to keep working and keep polishing your techniques or learning new ones. Then I spent like 2 years in a project that was basically a how do you say, comedia dell'arte. It was like a whole school we did that ended up again in a project with the teachers from France and Italy and Spain, and we created a company that would go and improvise in this technique, this mask technique. That I spent there 2 years on that project. But I guess the beauty of my job is that most of what really matters happens when you're doing it. You know? And if you have the right people witnessing that, and if you have the openness to allow someone to guide you, and to me that's what theater is. Cinema is different. In cinema today, we have shown that there's no way to get there. Today there's films with non-professional actors and professional actors, and you can't see the difference. You see a film where a kid takes over, and a 7-year-old delivers the performance of the film. Anyway, like I think film it's its own, but theater, no. In theater you need structure, and that structure, I guess, I got when I was from 14 to 21. I would say there was this project. There was this group of kids on TV when we started doing TV at 12. We were all sons and daughters of people from the theater. So our parents weren't like, okay, you can go do TV, but if it's going to be good for you, let's. So basically, they created a group, and we had to go to school basically every day in the afternoon, and they got us teachers, and we were part of a program for young actors for like 2 years, I guess. So, I mean, it was insane. It was like paradise, They would pay us to go every day from Monday to Friday, 3-4 hours to the school in the afternoons. And we would be teach, different techniques and music and dance. And like, we got it was quite quite a luxury to have.
Quite an education. Yeah, that's incredible. And I do this podcast and I talk to actors, and I feel like one of the constants for a lot of people is, they learned, like you said, the structure from doing theater, and then they carried that into other mediums like film, like television. And it's just curious when I see the constants throughout all these conversations. That seems to be one of them. And it seems to be like, that's where you learned the platform to then go on to other things.
Yeah, it is very different. I think theater is for an actor, I think it's needed for life, to go through the experience of being an actor in life. Theater can be very useful, because what happens in theater just happens in theater, which is that encounter, that moment where you are in front of an audience, when it's not just about your process, but your process gets affected by the way it's received by an audience, and that reminds you what we are here for, which is about communicating, about connecting. The screen can alienate you a lot, and you can live in a bubble, and you have to be reminded that you're telling stories about those watching you. It's always about that, It should, otherwise it becomes like a very self-indulgent process where it's all about you or your bubble, your experience. And the beauty of what we do is that we tell stories about what's in front of us, So one thing is to never lose the curiosity of going out to that world, But the other is to making sure you receive, you receive from those listening, you receive that reaction. And theater reminds you that. Theater also gives actors complete control, therefore complete responsibility. The way you can see it. You can see the way an actor that has done theater kind of like protects the work, the team, the collaboration, the atmosphere. It's I think that how fragile things can be, and when you manage to create something that matters, when you have a team, when you have a family, when understanding happens, how precious that is. And cinema sometimes can let you go through the whole experience without actually witnessing it. In cinema, there's this thing where, like, which I'm completely against, to be honest. And I try to avoid it as an actor and as a director and producer, which is keep the actors away, keep the actors in a bubble where they can't, where they don't really get to understand what they're part of, what's going on, what's happening, what the job of others is. What the struggles are, the challenges, and I think that's not just unfair, but it's a waste of an opportunity.
Absolutely.
And theater is the opposite. In theater, you're on the stage, and the light goes, and you have to come up with an idea of you come in on stage without the prop. that you need, and you have to come up with an idea of, how to do it without the knife,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh my God, shit, what am I gonna do now? And that brings that triggers a creativity that in an actor that makes you different, that makes you, and to me that's the beauty of collaboration, is what people can bring that you were not expecting, and that happens every night in theater. Also, actors are in complete control. The story happens to you from beginning to end. Therefore, you understand the long run. You understand that this is about that arc. And then you can go to cinema and do bits and pieces of a puzzle,
Mm.
with the knowledge of that
I, I
of
was
that long run.
I was going to ask how, like, this is all fascinating. And then it's like, how does that translate to something like Andor, which, piggybacking off of that to the current day? How do you find those pockets of instantaneous creativity and improvisation and stuff like that when it's such a massive controlled project that needs to be sort of a gigantic product and not a specific piece of art?
I tell you one thing. For me, it wasn't that way.
Mm,
This show, more than anything else I've done, out of my control, because like this is not done by my company nor produced by me. I mean, I'm an executive, but it's not produced from my company. uh, I would say we had all the freedom that we wanted it to make this a project that we felt we own, in many ways. And even though there is so many rules, and
yeah.
there is so many approvals to get and whatever, by the moment we were on set, we were in complete control, and we had the chance to explore there. There was still something to find.
Hmm.
uh, you know Things were not contrived in a way that you have no room to move.
Hmm.
We would get to set and explore different possibilities of doing one scene. We would also improvise. We were in COVID time, so
Yeah.
not everyone was there, but I remember calling Tony Gilroy many times from set saying, like, you know what, I'm feeling this is wrong and we should go this other way. What if I use this, like, in a different way than what it's written? Well, we're missing a moment here, and we would be collaborating till the moment of shooting, and coming up with ideas, trying different options, also, making sure they would have options on the editing room to go one way or the other. And I would say that Tony Gilroy, and Sana did a great job in not just the casting of the series of the cast, but also of, like, choosing all the people around, all the designers and people working behind the camera. Uh, it was people that understand how, like, a small and independent set works, like,
Hmm.
and we kept that energy, that energy through the whole way. There was, yes, the Andor has this huge scope,
Hmm.
and huge scope, and it has all this action and adventure that you expect in Star Wars. But then we go to very intimate moments, scenes that are just about two characters talking about, love and relations. You see them in their most, like, intimate spaces, just behaving and living, and those moments were treated like that, like in a very realistic way,
Hmm.
where things had to make sense. It wasn't like, well, you have to hold this thing because it was designed for this moment,
Hmm.
and then you have to walk there and get into the cockpit and do this because it's the way, the ship moves, and we want to sell a toy that looks just exactly like this. No, none of that, like, because those are the cliches and the stuff people
Yeah.
think about when they think about these huge projects. No, we would get to a set, and we would say, like, what's the best way to use this place and to make
Hmm.
it look real. And like, actions are have to they have a logic. you know.
Mhm.
And that logic is understood not just by us but by the designers too.
I was going to ask, I'm curious because your father designed sets, right? That's sort of that's what he did. I'm wondering, this it sounds like you are an actor who loves to look at their environment and say, what can we do with this? And that's I just sort of see the through line of how, your father introduced you to the theater, and he was a set designer, and production design is such an important. I'm wondering what that through line is how much you respect the set and respect the world and respect the things around you in the scene. How much of that is a through line from how you learned theater?
I mean, a lot. To me, that is a big thing in cinema, or like the idea of being really, really close connected to the set designer, to the costume designer, because it's you can't build a character if there's not a logic around him, in terms of what he wears, like the place he where he exists, it has to make sense. And I mean, Michael is the costume designer, and Luke the
Mm-hmm.
set designer, or the production designer, and those two are just genius, but truly genius, man. I mean, like incredibly specific about everything. There's a reason for everything. One of the things that was repeated the most on set and by Tony and everyone is like, this has to be real. This has to look as real as a galaxy far, far away can look. So I remember, for example, being in the kitchen of the house, and everything worked, and there was a logic, and I could operate there and actually fix myself a breakfast. Then that scene is happening.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that I'm in front of a weird machine that suddenly pops something out and I eat it. No, 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 no. There's a whole logic, and that can keep you active for a full 2 minute scene in front of a kitchen, and someone thought about that. That to me makes a big difference, because it's basically the difference between seeing a film, seeing someone pretending to be someone,
Mm-hmm.
or being able to witness reality, because a camera was placed in an angle that allows you to see someone actually living.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something we were very worried on the show, because obviously, yeah, the ideas are very out there, and these planets and the universe is out there, but at the same time, we are telling the story of the real people in this universe. There's no Jedi's here. There is no. This is people just surviving, and it has to be as grounded as possible. And the work of the set designing and the costume designing plays a huge role on that. The costumes. You've seen the costumes of Star Wars. They're so interesting and cool and weird also, and full of little like pockets and things and gadgets and stuff. Well, here none of those gadgets nor pockets were there because they look cool.
Mm-hmm.
They had a reason. So there was something there. If you put your hand inside one of those pockets, you can bring something out, and it's something you might be using in the scene. Therefore, there's a reason for that stuff. It looks cool, yes,
Yeah, don't get
but
me
it's
wrong, it
not there
does look
because
cool.
of that.
Yeah.
And that's the work of designers that spend a long time thinking and throwing ideas,
Mm-hmm.
and working closely with the writing, which is it's something I love talking about, because it's what makes Tony Gilroy different. Tony Gilroy doesn't go to his like cabin in the woods and writes, and
Yeah.
then sends the material, and you have to interpret that and do it. He, for example, one thing that he does is that he can't write a scene if he doesn't know the space where the
Mm-hmm.
scene happens. Therefore, he has to meet with the production designer first and talk about, like I'm in a hotel room at the moment, and this scene is happening in this couch in front of these fruits that were given to me, and this table, and my bed is over there, and so he needs to know where the bed is, where the table is, where the couch is, why
Mm-hmm.
why the windows are there and not in the other on the other wall, what's outside. So they design the place together. They talk about the place, and once he has a drawing of the place, a map of the place, then he starts writing. Therefore, every action he writes has a purpose in space.
I love that. That's
fascinating. And when he's writing, he's already collaborating. It's not a one-man show. There's a production designer that now is part of that idea. And as an actor, when I read that, I can't question that the character goes to the window there, because the window will be there, So I'm already thinking about what's next, what the possibilities are of how many different ways I can find to go to that window. But I know I have to go to that window, and therefore there's clarity for me. But what I mean is that when he writes something, he's already collaborating, and you're already part of it, and there's something there for you to do, very specific, very clear, and that's someone that understands cinema the way it should be, the richness of this collaboration and what this diversity can bring, of diversity of voices and perspectives can bring. I think it's quite interesting to see the result of that, because the way people talk about this show, and I'm talking about the team, you don't find often, you don't find often actors and designers, composer, producers talking about a show as if they were talking about the most personal thing, and it has a lot to do with the way Tony approaches collaboration.
Incredible. Well, I know that I have to let you go, and this was all so fascinating. If you could just answer very quickly, because this is something I'm very curious about. I have to assume that there's a sort of sense of release when you play a character's death. So I'm very curious what your experience was like, sort of the first time you reacquainted yourself with Cassian, or what it was like to come back to a character that you had sort of already let go.
It was really interesting. It sounded very challenging also, because I wasn't invited to go back to Cassian. I was invited to tell you what happened in the story of Cassian to get there. Therefore, to build a very different character, that could end there, In fact, that would make sense that it ends there. But it triggers, again, creativity in a different way, How far can you go from that without making it unreal, You have to believe at the end that he went through that journey and ended up sacrificing everything for a cause. But how far can you go? It's interesting because also it allows us to tell very intimate stories that you don't know. It's like approaching a historical piece, when something, an event happened or a character existed that did this, but now a film or a series is going to tell you what you don't know, right? I love historical films, and I always thought of this as one. It's like, okay, we know there's these characters that did this very special mission and that sacrificed themselves and that were important for the whole story to happen. But no one has asked why they were the ones that were willing to do that, and what makes them different than anyone else in the rebellion. What makes this team so special, and what makes this man so confident and so clear. And to me, that's when there's a need for us in this universe, because we can bring you a realistic story of how you could be part of change. You could be part of a revolutionary act. How much can we bring this character to the ground you and I belong to, how much can we remind you that this guy is just a regular guy, and that to me it's great, because no one approaches films this big or projects this big saying let's do the story of a regular person. You normally you want to go like, oh, but this guy is very special because of this and that, and this guy is wow. No, here, what we have to remind you is that it was a guy you wouldn't think could do something like this. It's a guy that could be in the same room you are, and you wouldn't come out saying, "Oh my God, that day I met him because he said this," and "Oh my God, the way he talked to me and looked at me." No, 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 no. This is the guy that has been always there in that room, and no one paid attention to him, and he found the strength to do something extraordinary.
Amazing. I love that.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Diego, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. This was a thrill. We cannot wait for Andor, and we can't wait to see whatever is next for you. It's always a pleasure seeing you on screen. We hope to see many, many, many more examples of it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
Of course. Thanks, as always, to our brilliant producer, Jamie Muffett, and to the whole team at Backstage. Samantha Sherlock, Mark Stinson, Caitlin Watkins, and of course, Kasey Howe. Visit Backstage.com, and don't forget, you can subscribe to Backstage with code ENVELOPE at checkout for a free trial. 100% free, you simply cannot beat that. For more exclusive content, find us on Facebook and Twitter at In the Envelope, and subscribe, share, and leave a comment. Who should we interview next? Let us know. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time for another peek in the envelope.